All right, I just continue to talk then. So when we developed this biennial implementation plan, and I was part of the MOMP group, the Modeling, Observing, and Prediction group, when we put this implementation plan together, that implementation plan is pretty much a big spreadsheet with lots of objectives that result in several deliverables. And then we all spent a lot of time, and also at the kickoff workshop a month or so ago, identifying the different agencies involved and the different communities of practice involved that can help with making sure we actually achieve something, that we deliver what's in the implementation plan. So there are clear deliverables identified in this implementation plan under each objective. And that spreadsheet or the implementation plan is somewhere as well on the IARPIC website, and it's really useful, and I encourage you all to look at it and click on the different sheets for the different priority areas. And for priority area 2, the atmosphere team of practice, what is it called? Community of practice, sorry. The name changed, and I still have to get my head around it. So the atmosphere community of practice is mentioned in several of our deliverables. Now, when we discussed this at NASA, and especially the ones where NASA is identified as a lead, we had this concern: can we actually deliver? Is this something that it needed to be something that we're actually doing, that we're research, that we're actually funding? And that was a big discussion point at headquarters. So for priority area 2, and hey, I'm really happy that Hei Long is there, because I wasn't at our PA2 meeting yesterday. So Hei Long, please chime in whenever I got something wrong, or whenever you feel you'd like to add something. So we have, for priority area 2, we have 3 objectives in this big spreadsheet, the implementation plan. One is advance our understanding of Arctic amplification and the associated connections with lower latitudes. And that's something where the community of practice directly feeds in, right? How do we, it's in the atmosphere largely, to some extent the ocean, obviously, where polar processes affect, the climate, the weather in the United States, etc. Objective 2.2 is observe, understand, predict, and project Arctic ecosystem change and its impact on humans and the entire Earth system. Meredith, I'm so happy you're following and just post these things in the chat. It makes my life really easy. And then objective 2.3 is understand interactions between social, ecological, physical Arctic systems, particularly in the context of coastal climate and cryospheric change. So under each of these objectives, as I said, there are quite a few deliverables. And if you look at this big spreadsheet, you can find community of practice for atmosphere, mentioned quite a bit. As for PA2, Arctic system interactions, we see ourselves mainly, or our responsibility, I should say, mainly as a liaison between the different communities of practice. As the term system interactions implies, we see us PA2 as fostering the interactions between these different communities of practice. So we can envision having joint meetings hosting joint meetings between the atmosphere community of practice and, for example, the sea ice community of practice, to foster this dialogue between these 2 groups of different experts. And that's where we are. And we're still, trying to figure out in a way, and we had good discussions at the kickoff workshop in Anchorage, to actually, how do we make this happen? How do we deliver what we promised to deliver in the implementation plan? But
Thank
overall, nothing that, because there's no funding associated with it, it's not something that where we will say that there was a worry about it when we had our discussions. Are we, people wondered from the different communities of practice, hey, how are we doing this? Should be, are we the leads for the community of practice, from the communities of practice, are on the hook to do something? And as I said, because there is no funding associated with it, it's hopefully all items that are funded in any case. And the communities of practice, the way I see it is, bringing together this information and then bring it then as an atmosphere community of practice, talking with, for example, just stick with my example, talk with the CI's community of practice to provide this deliverable. Does this all make sense? And I'm, as you probably can tell, I'm still like, how do we actually, make it all happen that we have after, it's a biennial implementation plan, after 2 years, have tangible deliverables that we can write up and put together.
Yeah, thank you, Torsten. It was a really great overview. I think for everybody, including those who were involved with the development of the plan and the implementation plan, it's a process to learn how this all plays out. And I think particularly for some of the community members, as you've heard today, we have everybody from graduate students to scientists to program managers on the call. It becomes, the discussions that we have here in the communities of practice become very central to how the implementation works and how much progress is made towards the deliverables. And I know it feels a little bit abstract probably to some people right now, but I'll have some examples of the types of deliverables, for example, that are under 2.1. When we talk about what the atmosphere team is planning for the next few months, there's, we'll start to draw some dots between those deliverables and the sorts of meetings that we're planning to have. So hopefully that will be helpful to people. And you also mentioned, of course, all the agencies, and one of the things that we wanted to do for this kind of re-kickoff meeting, I'll say, it's not a kickoff meeting, we've had this group together for a long time, but kind of a shifting direction. And so we wanted to allow program managers an opportunity to provide perspectives on how their programs are perhaps engaging with, responsive to, et cetera, the IARPIC plan and the implementation plan. And so that's kind of what was on the agenda for the meeting. But before we transition too subtly here, I want to give people an opportunity to ask Torsten any questions if there are any, or any points of clarification. Otherwise, we'll kind of move on. And I think some of these descriptions that Torsten was giving of the process and the different pieces of the plan will hopefully become a little bit clearer as we move forward here. Any questions initially for Torsten, or Torsten, any other things you wanted to say before we transition?
Javier has his hand up, I see.
Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Javier.
Oh, no, this is just a little, a quick shot to break the ice, actually. But I think that if through this effort, we reach the point that the CI's community and the atmospheric science community start a conversion dialogue, that would be wonderful. Because for a long time, we've been in the atmosphere, we have been ignored by them, okay? And so anyway, that's I think is a good effort, actually. The other thing that I noticed in this, that I participated actually in this new plan, is the inclusion of education, called Arctic STEM. And I think that they still require elements of further clarifications that we can discuss later on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Javier. Obviously, education and training, capacity building is one of the primary foundational activities. And I think, as you'll see, there are deliverables that are associated with things like development of workshops. And from an agency perspective, you might imagine that part of that education, training, and capacity building might be supporting early career scientists to participate in those workshops. making sure that we have broad representation when those workshops are held, things like that. And obviously I cannot speak for any of the agencies, but I feel like that's generally aligned with their purpose in many ways anyway. And hopefully some of the program managers will help speak to that. Julian, I see your hand.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to ask a quick question. Maybe you could give me like a general understanding. In terms of objective 2.3, in terms of physical Arctic systems, how could you say how we approach that type of problem? I can understand us measuring what we measure as scientists, but how do we use our work to help, I guess, indigenous communities? Or are we more focused on getting indigenous knowledge to inform or support scientific findings? Or is it both? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, thank you, Julian, for your question. I think it's a really important one. It's not my plan, it's a community plan. So I can give you my perspectives, but I don't know that that's meant to be the final word on any of this, but I would say it's both. And I think it's important, of course, to take all the perspectives into account when we work towards the implementation of this plan. Torsten, Barry, Meredith, or anyone else, actually. I don't know if anyone else has thoughts about Julian's question specifically.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question, especially when it comes to indigenous or traditional knowledge. It's something that we at NASA, I should say, I at NASA at least, don't really interact much, or don't really have much, many connections with, and that makes IARPIC a very interesting entity for this, because for me it provides very new perspective, and what indigenous communities need, how we can provide information to indigenous communities, how we can more utilize traditional knowledge in our funded research, etc. And I don't. So it's a very interesting topic, because that's something that's, as a NASA person, quite new for me in this whole IARPIC scenario, especially for NASA. NSF is probably better equipped in this regard, and maybe I can put Colleen on the spot a little bit on that topic.
Thank you.
I'm happy to talk about that topic anytime. There's lots of resources out there for sure.
Okay, thank you.
And I will just add from like a IARPIC perspective as well, the Participatory Research and Indigenous Leadership in Research group that's getting off the ground now is a source for looking to how to do that in a way that is led by Indigenous people. And so I think that group will be really important in kind of helping steer some of this conversation in a way that is kind of stays away from causing harm, because it will be Indigenous led.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. I'll say very quickly before we transition that from the perspective of the Atmosphere, formerly collaboration team, now community practice, we have not historically had very much participation from Indigenous people or groups, and it would be great to expand that. I don't know whether the other collaboration teams have seen more, but I think from the Atmosphere side specifically, it's something that we'd like to work to extend and hopefully, expand the amount of different perspectives we have in our discussions and in our meetings.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for those questions. I recognize that we're running a little behind on the agenda, so maybe we can move on to the next topic area, which is allowing the program managers who are here to give some perspectives from their programs and from their sides on the plan and how their programs are responsive to the plan. So I have a blank slide for that, because I, again, cannot speak for any of the agencies, but I know some people who can. So maybe, Colleen, maybe we'll start with you since you're on my screen at the moment, and then we can work our way down the list of managers who are here.
Sure. I prepared a couple of slides, but I can go through them really quickly just to save you all some time. But I wanted
You're welcome to share them. I can
Okay.
stop.
Great. Yeah, I figured this might be easier since navigating NSF processes are not the easiest things to do. So can you all see that okay?
Yep.
It is in presenter mode for me.
Yeah, let's see if that works better. How's that?
Perfect.
Great.
Thanks.
Wow, that was surprisingly easy to fix. Okay, so NSF is kind of a weird beast in the IARPIC world in that we're not a mission-driven agency. Our deliverables for the IARPIC research plan depend on us giving money to people to actually perform the deliverables. So most of our NSF's deliverables are based on us providing funding opportunities for you all to do the work. So I just wanted to go over some opportunities that might be of relevance to people in this group really quickly. So just a quick overview of the Arctic Sciences section here, and I won't go too deeply into this, but we have a number of different programs. The Arctic Research Support and Logistics Program is not the one that will be funding your proposals directly, but will be making sure you're getting out to the field safely and as as efficiently as possible. We do have a new research coordination and policy program that actually supports the IARPIC work on the ground. And we also support polar education and polar cyber infrastructure. Probably the Arctic Natural Sciences and Arctic Observing Network and the Arctic System Sciences program are the ones that would probably be of most interest to the members of the atmospheric community of practice. So you can see here some very brief overviews of those programs. I will say that we have a lot of program officers on detail to other parts of the agency right now, but you can see these contacts. You can feel free to reach out to any of them to ask questions. I will say we get a lot of questions about where the boundaries are between the Arctic Natural Sciences and Arctic System Science program, given that the atmospheric people who participate in this team might kind of fit mostly into those. I would just say, feel free to write the one pager of the proposal that you want to write, and then we can help you find the best fit for that. So mostly probably where you will all be going to is our Arctic Research Opportunities solicitation. You can Google this NSF 21526 number here. We're on a rolling deadline. You can submit them every time you want. We kind of support a number of different opportunities, your more general Arctic science proposals. We can support workshops. We have large project support, research networking activities. So if you're interested in maybe a deliverable associated with this team that you're thinking, hey, we could use a workshop to kind of develop those questions more, or hey, it would be great to have a planning grant, or we really just need a bigger grant to get us together to really think about what we're doing next. These are really kind of what the solicitation you would look at to think about what proposals you would be submitting to submit work being done by what you want to do for this community of practice. I'll also just highlight too that, in addition to the kind of the standard solicitation that we have a number of early career opportunities, which include, we have an OPP postdoc opportunity. We have doctoral dissertation research improvement grants. We often supplement to support teachers and students and REUs to really support kind of the broadening participation in early career researchers in Arctic science. So really take a look at some of those opportunities as well. And just a reminder too that we have a newsletter that you can sign up below. This really provides you with all of the up-to-date information from the Office of Polar Programs about any updated funding opportunities, things that are going on, new staff, and things like that. So I would really recommend you getting on that email list if you are not already, to kind of stay up to date on what is happening there. And thank you. That was really quick and dirty. I know I only had a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to give you kind of a quick overview of kind of opportunities you could be going for to kind of support your work in this team. And I'll send these slides over to Meredith so she can post them on the website. But I'm also happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Colleen. That was great and efficient, and I really appreciate that. I know there's a lot to
Efficient,
cover.
but probably a lot of information that was, you know, a lot at once. So happy to take any questions.
No, I think it was great. I mean, for those of us who have read the plan and have seen the implementation document, I think we can already start to draw some lines between the different programs and groups, and particularly early career opportunities and some of the things that are in that plan. Are there any questions, excuse me, for Colleen before we move on? Okay, if not, maybe sticking with the National Science Foundation, we also have Nick Anderson who's here. And while his program is not necessarily polar focused or Arctic focused, it is atmosphere focused. So Nick, if you want to give a quick overview, and it would be great. Thanks again for being here today.
Yeah, of course. And this dovetails very well with what Colleen just went through. And yeah, let me get to. Okay, are you seeing it?
So yes, we can see it, but it is again presenter mode. So if you can swap displays, that would be great.
Yep. That's the one.
Now it's working. Thanks,
Looks
Nick.
better. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. So I figured there might be a question. So I'm in the Division of Atmospheric Science. You can see on the left at NSF, we're structured such that there's a director for geosciences, and then the Office of Polar Programs, Atmospheric, Ocean, Earth are the divisions under geosciences. So for most Arctic research, clearly you're going to the Office of Polar Programs. However, there are cases where you know, it might be a better fit in our division in AGS, and that can be any number of different programs. So I just wanted to, I kind of wanted to make the statement that there's no firm line between what's an atmospheric science proposal that goes to OPP or one that's handled by, you know, inside AGS. But there are guidelines, you know, things that are absolutely place-based, such as, you know, a ship floating around in the ice. Like that's generally going to be an OPP, whereas something that has more connections to the lower latitudes or kind of study, I don't want to say more general processes, but processes that are represented, you know, elsewhere on the globe. So I point out CSER. So we are just rolling out the awards for this. This is a big field campaign that we're funding that is looking at the formation of clouds and precipitation that are coming off of, you know, so with the cold Arctic wind comes off the ice sheet north of Scandinavia, and you get these cellular, you know, clouds and precipitation, and the climate models don't handle that well. But you also see that in other places of the globe. You know, you see it off the East Coast when there's a wintertime cold front passage. So, you know, that's kind of, you know, so AGS has CSER, and we're sharing it like a quarter with Arctic Natural Sciences. So you see how we can kind of share. And then location does somewhat matter. AGS doesn't really fund much on Greenland or the true Arctic, but we do fund a number of research projects in Alaska. And when I was looking at the the plan, I saw for the first time the chart of the what is considered Arctic, which was pretty interesting. How it's a nice circle except for the Bering Sea, which sticks out. That was entertaining. So this is the last thing I have. I just wanted to show some current awards and where kind of which programs they're in atmospheric sciences. So a lot in climate, a lot in chemistry. Our geospace colleagues like to put instruments up as far north as they can. Paleoclimate, which makes sense with ice cores and everything. And then my meteorology program still in there. That'll grow when all of CSER goes through. And some sample awards, Alpaca, you know, Arctic amplification, which I know is in the report. Again, reconstructions of paleoclimate, and then you know, the CSERs, the cloud aerosol, you know, dynamics. So that's it. That's and again, we are exactly like Colleen. We have a free open call for proposals. Generally, if you think that you want to submit something that might cross the boundaries, Colleen had it right. Just send us a one-pager and we pass it around between all of us, and we decide, maybe this goes here. And then we always reserve the right to change your mind and, and say, no, you take it. And so I think that basically covers it.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And like you said, like Torsten said as well, there's a lot of work that spans the Arctic and the mid latitudes. And so there are these interfaces where one or the other program may be more appropriate. So really appreciate you giving that perspective. I think we need to keep moving. We're running out of time a little bit. So, all of the people who are here are easily contacted, I think, by email. And if you have questions, please follow up with them directly. Maybe we'll transition to NASA. And Barry, I'll let you lead this part of the discussion since you yourself are also at NASA, and you can kind of identify how to best put the pieces together.
Sure. Okay. Hal, did you want to go and present on your?
Sure. Actually, I sent it to Meredith already, and it would be safer, I think, if she presented.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, just give me one moment to get those slides up.
All right, I have 3 slides, and these will be an introduction to the Radiation Sciences program, which is the program I manage. It's found in the atmospheric composition focus area with same place as Barry's program. And in a larger sense, it's part of the Earth Science Division. And so Thorsten, Barry, and I are all part of ESD. Okay, the overall thrust of the Radiation Sciences program is to better understand how aerosol particles, clouds, gases interact with the Earth's energy budget. And that's a big job. And so I've focused down on that. And that's that iconic image to the right comes from the IPCC. And just the point here, the reason I included it is to indicate that most of the uncertainty in our measurement or our estimation of radiative forcing of the climate comes from clouds, aerosols, and their interactions. And so I have focused my program on that. And so I've listed the foci of the Radiation Sciences program there below. So we work toward measuring aerosol concentrations and composition, microphysics, and optical properties. And for cloud particles, concentration, microphysics, and optical properties. I did a little bit of stuff with developing 3D radiative transfer codes a number of years ago. We got to the point where those were good enough that we didn't need to worry about them. The computers were fast enough that we didn't need to make the codes that much better. I support airborne and surface-based measurements, and I'll get to that on the next page. Also support data analysis of satellite and suborbital observations, and a little bit of process modeling. So next page, next slide. Okay, in terms of, obviously NASA does a lot of satellite measurements, and I'll actually leave that alone and talk a little bit more about suborbital activities. I help support 2 ongoing global networks, the AeroNet network, which is like 450 CML sun photometers, which measures aerosol optical depth and aerosol properties on a global basis, and then MPL-NET, which deploys micropulse LiDARs in various locations to measure the vertical distribution of aerosols and clouds. Okay. I also support airborne campaigns, and I listed there, I put the logos for the aerosol or for the airborne campaigns I've supported over the years. Crystal Face in Florida, TC4 in 2007 in Costa Rica, ArcTask, which was 2 deployments, one out of Fairbanks and one out of Cold Lake in Canada. MacPex was out of Houston in 2011. Seekers, which was a relatively large campaign, 3 aircraft in 2013 out of Houston. Arise, which was a small campaign, putting our toe in the water or in the ice, looking at aerosols, clouds, and radiation in the Arctic. Was based in Fairbanks. Most recently, we went to the Philippines with Campex in 2019. Each of these projects, each of these campaigns looked at all of the aerosol and cloud interaction activities. Look at my next slide, please. What we're looking forward to next, and we've started that the process for a campaign we're calling ARC6, the Arctic Radiation Cloud Aerosol Surface Interaction Experiment. It's going to take place in the spring and midsummer of 2024, so that's next summer, just a little bit more than a year from now. It'll be based in northern Greenland at Thule, and it's driven by the need for us to understand how the presence or absence of surface ice, sea ice, surface sea ice, and the state of the surface of that ice, whether it's wet or how rough it is, how that feeds back into the energy budget, and how that affects cloud properties and how aerosols affect cloud properties. And we'll be doing this by flying 2 research aircraft, one high altitude aircraft, which will have 2 remote sensors, a LiDAR and an imager, and will drop dropsondes for meteorological measurements, and then a lower altitude aircraft, which will make primarily in situ measurements. That will be the P3. So we're very much looking forward to going to Thule, and we're in fact in the middle of preparing for that now. So that's a quick overview of radiation sciences.
Thanks, Hal. I wanted to give Thorsten a minute just to chime in.
Okay, but before Thorsten does, I forgot to say, ARC6 is co-sponsored by Thorsten's program and mine. So now Thorsten can talk.
Yeah,
Thoughts about ARC6, Thorsten?
Well, I actually, let me just yeah. So ARC6 is great. I love it when we program managers work together and do actual system support, actual system science. So for cryo, I'm just being very quick. We support investigations of polar ice, including an Antarctic and Greenland ice sheet, polar glaciers, and then sea ice in both the Arctic and in the Antarctic. And that's mostly based on satellite and remote sensing observations. And we try to, the program seeks to improve our understanding of cryospheric processes and link the cryosphere to the global system and enable predictions. So consequently, it's very similar to what Hal just said. We're supporting satellite mission, data analysis, airborne campaigns, in situ observations. People in our program go to Greenland, go to the sea ice, and then also some modeling. ARC6 is a big thing upcoming for us. Very exciting about that. AOS is very exciting because the Arctic Observing System, part of the next EOS mission, ESO missions will be super exciting because for the first time, we will have a precipitation radar in a high inclination orbit. I was complaining about it all along, that GPM did not have one. And then, and hopefully just a quick update on something that, because Hal mentioned Thule, hopefully next week we will be flying an unmanned airborne system, a UAS, out of Thule with a snow radar on board that can measure snow depth on sea ice as well as the snowfall on Greenland. And from snow depth on Greenland and snow depth on sea ice, we can infer precipitation as well. So that's a UAS that can stay in the air for multiple days, and that's something we are supporting and trying to make use of maybe more in the future. But that's in 2 minutes, the cryo program. Thanks much, Barry.
Yeah, thanks, Thorsten. I do think it's unfortunately too rare that we have the sea ice and the atmospheric community work together. So this partnership that you and Hal have is really valuable and a great example of how important it is for the program managers to work together. So I'm going to give it back to Heis. Yeah, thanks, Heis.
Thanks, Barry, and thank you, everybody. It's great. Clearly, we have a couple of agencies or a few agencies not here, but time-wise, I think that actually works out. We might invite them for later meetings. Notably, DOE and NOAA are certainly strong contributors to Arctic atmospheric research. We're quickly running out of time, but I wanted to quickly share with the team our plans as a community for the coming months. And so I was talking earlier about the nitty-gritty details and the deliverables and the nuts and bolts, and here's what that looks like in reality. So we're currently in March, and we have our welcome back meeting going. We have some of the program managers here. Looking ahead, we're planning monthly meetings roughly. And initially, we just heard a little bit about ARC-6, but we're planning to take a much deeper dive into ARC-6 in April, specifically supporting these 3 deliverables. And you'll see on the right side there, I've actually included the text of those deliverables, and this gives you some idea and perspective on the level of detail that goes into these deliverables that are part of the implementation plan. So April, we're looking at ARC-6. May, we're also looking at ARC-6 in conjunction with the sea ice, looking at slightly different perspectives on that project, but kind of keeping a theme going for a couple months. In June, we're hoping to bring in representatives from a DOE-led effort called HILAT, which focuses on understanding of polar processes and Arctic processes using a variety of different modeling tools and helping to improve those modeling tools. And then in July and August, we have plans to revisit Mosaic as one of the big projects that's happened in the last several years. And particularly thinking about, actually, it's more focused on atmospheric rivers and moisture transport. And I mentioned Mosaic because there were some advection events observed during Mosaic, but there are also other projects like the Art of Melt project, which is led by the Swedish team, but has US participants as well, that focuses on this transport of moisture and the subsequent impacts on the surface of that type of long-range transport. And then in August, looking at, again, the Art of Melt campaign specifically, gives some idea on early results and an overview of what was observed and how that campaign went. So these are really focused on deliverable 2.1.4, which involves the role of atmospheric rivers in Arctic amplification, and again, trying to help to coordinate and push into direction a conference session or a series of conference sessions on that topic over the next couple of years. So if anyone here in the community is interested in that topic or would like to be involved with the planning of conference sessions around that topic, those meetings would be great to attend as we kick off those discussions. So we're at the end of our hour. There was going to be time for some input and some feedback, but maybe we'll save that for emails since we're out of time. Some specific questions we'd like the community to consider. Excuse me. One is, how can we best increase participation in the team? You know, we have historically had pretty good participation, and it's important to remember that while the meeting attendance fluctuates, we also have people going back to the recordings on a very regular basis, usually 30 to 50 views in a month based on the statistics we've gotten. And then secondly, what is valuable to this community in terms of participation in the group and the information that you can take from it. So some thoughts to take away, and perhaps if you'd like to email me, Meredith or Barry, with some ideas there, please feel free to do so. But these conversations will continue in the coming meetings in the months ahead. So with that, I think we will wrap up. And I'd like to again thank everybody, and particularly program managers, for being here and taking time to communicate with this community. We'll hopefully see many of you next month, and let's keep these conversations rolling. So thank you. Great to see you all, and have a great rest of your March.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.